everybody. And we've got to come and focus on you because we've been like playing in the background. I'm Camberley Bates. I am your host here for Infrastructure Matters. And of course, joined by my co-hosts, Stephen Dickens and Krista Case.
This is the new Krista Case, Krista 2.0, new and improved.
100%. So the question is, if you had a last name like McComber, would you change to Case?
So the deal is that I am legally hyphenating, but Krista Case has a nice ring to it, and it is also much easier to remember. So it has kind of the double whammy there. So
and you don't have to spell it over and over for people. There you go.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, first off, I've got to say congratulations. People may not know what we're talking about. Krista got married. Fantastic news. Long time coming. Really great photos. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much. We're still waiting for the official sneak peeks from the photographers very anxiously, but we got some lovely shots from some of our guests, including Camberley. So very much appreciate that. And we've gotten so much support, even through my professional network as well. So we really appreciate it. And it was a beautiful day that was over in about 30 seconds. And
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we've had quite a bit going on, and Krista, as she was out for getting married, kind of missed the CrowdStrike disaster, and here she is in the security business that she's back on. So we're going to put her front and central to say, okay, so now that you're back from the wedding stuff, now where are we with CrowdStrike, and what should we know about this right now after it's been a week?
It has been. Yeah. And it was ironic that 48 hours after our wedding, apparently the entire tech and security world decided to have a party of sorts. But absolutely. So, I think probably everybody knows, the largest outage, I would say from my perspective, really in history, resulting from the flawed update to CrowdStrike, their Falcon solution that was pushed to Windows machines. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time recapping exactly what happened, because I think, to Camberley, your point, it's been a week at this point. I think it's been well covered, but taking a little bit of a step back from my perspective, one thing that's very important to kind of recognize is that this was not a security incident. Want to make sure that point is sort of front and center here. It was an issue of a flawed software code update getting pushed out, right? So it's sort of, on one hand, a really great reminder, because we have spent so much time over the last couple of years, and for good reason, covering, cyber resiliency, what to do in the event of a cyber attack, that I think we've almost lost sight that there still are other incidents and disaster events that we have to be prepared for and be able to recover from. What I will say is that the CrowdStrike solution, part of why, unfortunately, this bug wreaked so much havoc is due to the fact that the CrowdStrike solution requires that very low level access to the Windows machines at that kernel level, right? At that kernel perspective, I should say. So again, that's something that is one reason why it caused so much havoc, but it really is just a reminder of the need for a very solid plan for resiliency and recovery. And so I think the data protection companies, near and dear to my heart, but they're going to, I think, have a really great opportunity here to talk about what they can do to help in the event that, hopefully it won't, but in the event that something like this were to happen again in the future.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that I've seen come out, that this affected 1% of all Windows machines. So I don't know, I haven't got that validated, I haven't been able to check. So that's the first thing. The second piece, as with some of the communities I'm in, the Linux and mainframe communities, there's been a lot of smug responses, a lot of victory laps, a lot of people sort of, I saw Sousa doing this, taking a victory lap, and I'm like, guys, read the room. All of the people who are buyers of your software are also probably Windows server admins as well at the same time. So maybe don't take a victory lap. I think just the scale of these outages. People don't realize the interconnected world they live in, and if this stuff that we rely on every day catches a cold for even a day, the world can stop. How many people stranded at airports? The National Health Service in the UK couldn't issue prescriptions, surgeries cancelled, people being able to, Shira told me a story about how she had to explain what was going on to a line of people at a local bank because they were trying to rip apart the teller. And she's like, no, let me tell you what's happened and why it's not this lady's fault. So I think just the blast radius of this type of stuff, if we can validate that it is 1% of Windows machines that were affected. The other piece I've heard, which is why I'm bringing up this 1%, people are saying, oh, the security market's too concentrated. Look at the impact that CrowdStrike would to have. If they've got 1% market share of updating Windows servers, there's no FTC kind of case here against. This isn't a big tech broke the world story. CrowdStrike's not that massive a company. They haven't got 100% market share. There's hundreds of players who do what they do. So I think there's just some perspective. I mean, it gets lost in the noise, but it's fascinating for me.
I had the opportunity to speak to CIOs, CISOs this last week and get a little bit here. A couple of things that was kind of brought up. The last time something like this happened was 2010, when McAfee hit a update like this. Similar situation was a long time ago. So, that's 14 years that, some of these kids, some of the guys running the operations were still in elementary school. So the memory is not new.
Let's put it that way.
from my old age, but one of the things to talk about is that where is the discipline of rolling out updates within the IT organization, and it's usually the discipline is usually N-2, so you stay behind. Now, somehow or another, this for some of these people, this slipped through that practice, or maybe they don't have that practice because of the 0-day problem. And saying, okay, so was this something that was that important that needed to roll because it was there was a cyber problem or however that came out. So those are the questions they're asking themselves now as they go back and look at their procedures within their systems about, are we sticking to the N-2? And in what cases do we do exceptions to allow this to roll out because what is going to happen?
That's the Hobson's choice for me if you're a CISO. You've got a patch coming out that fixes a critical issue that could bring down all your systems, so you want to roll it out as fast as possible. But if you roll it out as fast as possible without testing, you can bring down all your systems. Which box do you open?
Well, and some of the folks that I talked to is that it didn't take all of the Windows boxes down. They were unique. I mean, they talked about, we have all of these Windows systems out there. What it took down was just the email servers, or what it took down was just, something, this order processing servers. It wasn't ubiquitous of what it hit. So even if I've got my, set aside boxes that I download the patches on, I run it and clear it, and I clear the patch, and then I roll it out. In that situation, I still may have corner cases. So this is, it's kind of an odd.
Did you hear from the people you spoke to? I mean, if I was, and maybe this is my big enterprise kind of background, if I was running a big bank or a big telco or a big retailer, and there was roll CrowdStrike out to every one of my end user machines, or go, I don't know this market well enough, say vendor A and vendor B that both do the same thing, would it be an idea to just go with a dual vendor approach and have half of my servers updated by CrowdStrike and half of them updated by another vendor? Because then if this happens again, only half of my servers go down and I've got something to back up and recover.
And that is what they did bring out. I mean, that was one of the strategies, is that saying, some of them said, okay, I have split vendor strategy here. However, if you're a large company, that's probably going to work very well. The smaller the company is, the more likely you are to use just a single one because then you don't, because you don't have the skill base for it. But so that was another idea. And Krista, to your point, where you were talking about that focus from cyber. Now, and that's what they raised. It's like, yeah, we've been focused on cyber, but there's two parts to this. There is the disaster recovery piece of it, and you have to have your playbooks and everything for that. And there's the cyber recovery, and you have to have your playbooks and everything for that. So it was kind of
the really interesting thing for me is going to be automation. This is an automation problem.
Well,
as
that's
you said,
exactly what I.
Well, it's an automated patch push.
I wonder if ChatGPT could figure this out.
Well, I think it's going to introduce some, if IT operations and security teams have already been a bit skeptical regarding some of these automated and kind of AI-driven capabilities, if they were already a bit skeptical, they're going to be even more so now, right? And so exactly. I do think we're going to see a ripple effect there. And just regarding the dual vendor approach, I mean, we heard a ton at RSA just sort of around, okay, we're moving towards platforms in the security market, and we're trying to help you consolidate down your vendors and tools. And, again, I think this is another great example where, security teams are perhaps not going to only want to work with multiple vendors to have best of breed, but also to reduce their risk, right? So it's, definitely, I think it's going to shift some of these pendulums that we've been seeing, swing in certain directions here.
So let's go on to a related topic, which is the U.S. East Coast outage with Azure. And go ahead, Steve.
Well, so Microsoft had a double whammy last Friday. Obviously, they got sort of dragged along for the ride by CrowdStrike. You could say they were lucky to pick the best day to have one of their major US and probably one of the largest cloud regions in the world go down at the same time as CrowdStrike. So if you're going to pick a day not to avoid front page news for having a major outage, it was last Friday, because this would have been. So I've seen.
Is that making lemonade out of lemons?
Yes,
I think Microsoft would do it that way. I mean, so Microsoft's got a couple of big regions in the US. US Central's probably the biggest, and it's got 3 availability zones, and all three of them are down for 14 plus hours from Thursday night to Friday through Friday. I spoke to numerous clients who have got 365 services, i.e. email, that weren't back on email until mid-afternoon, Friday afternoon. So it pulled that, and I'll give you the list of the services. App Service, Azure Active Directory, Azure Cosmos DB, Microsoft Sentinel, Azure Data Factory, Event Hub, Service Bus, Log Analytics, SQL Database, SQL Managed Instance, Virtual... I mean, there's probably 20 plus things here that I could list. It doesn't make for a great podcast if I go and list off a bunch of services. But they had a multi-availability zone, single region outage for 14 hours plus at the same time as CrowdStrike, fortunately for them, that pulled down. And once you go digging through this, and I went through and looked through it and spoke to some people who have got some knowledge. They made a storage update that really just pulled down this entire region.
A storage update, because I didn't hear exactly what happened.
Yeah, I'll blame
it on the storage guys again.
It's always you storage people. I can't
catch a break.
It was storage and persistent disks around virtual machines. I've got a research note. It ended up being almost 1,000 words because you needed the detail. I can share that if you follow me on X or on LinkedIn. I posted it earlier this week. I think some of the learnings for this, and the interesting thing for me, is availability zones within regions won't save you if the region goes down. So let's just debunk that as a DR strategy for a start off. If you're in one region and in 2 availability zones and the region goes down, you're down.
Yeah.
Public clouds are architected for 3 nines availability. If you need more than 3 nines, don't put your workload on the public cloud. In fact, I have to say that 18 years into the public cloud being deployed is still kind of like weird for me. You need to think about this thing. You need to be thinking about multi-cloud. You need to be thinking about multi-region. You need to be thinking whether your workload should be on a public cloud in the first place, or whether you should be architecting it with a private cloud or hybrid cloud solution. All of these, and I'm not knocking Microsoft. Microsoft do a great job of running a cloud service, multiple billions of revenue coming, lots of happy customers, continuing to grow. You can hold. I said to somebody today when earlier this week talking about this, you can hold two truths to be true at the same time. The public cloud can be amazing and it can be growing, and on-premise infrastructure can be great and can be growing and be the right thing for certain workloads. These two truths can be true at the same time.
Well, and it's interesting, Stephen. So one of the first projects I worked on when I joined Camberley's team 5 years ago now was on multi-cloud kind of data management and data protection. And probably the most consistent piece of feedback coming out of that, it was a research study, was, as a practitioner, I simply don't trust putting all of my eggs in one basket of one cloud provider. And I really would love to have the ability to either fail over or migrate my data between, as you mentioned, ideally 2 cloud providers, or at minimum, as you're mentioning here, a couple of regions, a couple of availability zones. So it's, to your point, cloud market's been around for 18 years. We've certainly been seeing this feedback for years now. And I think it's, like you say, just a great reminder of why that dual-pronged approach there is probably going to be the most appropriate.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Camberley.
That opens, when what you're talking about opens the doors for the traditional software vendors that have the replication and availability, high availability capability that can operate in multiple clouds. So instead of relying on Azure's or AWS's or Google's software that does that within their own cloud and their regions, and now I'm looking at, say, one of the people that we've worked with recently was Sios, but there's also, Veritas and those kind of folks that have software that will help you create reliability capabilities, high availability across clouds, seamlessly, whatever seamlessly means with any technology. You got to read through the capabilities. So, Steve,
well, the interesting thing for me, and maybe this is the space I live in, is Europe is starting to regulate for stuff like this. They've seen concentration risk. They've seen how concentrated public cloud providers are into particular data center locations. So Paris, Dublin, London, Frankfurt, the amount of concentration of multiple cloud providers into single data centers. So the DORA regulations in Europe, great place to start, great place to get educated. DORA applies to US organizations that operate in Europe. But if you're looking for a great place to go and discuss, say you're a mid-sized bank in Wisconsin with no operations in Europe and you don't know where to start, Europe's doing a great job of this. Go read DORA, apply DORA to your organization in Wisconsin that's got no European operations. It's not a bad place to get going.
Absolutely.
So there is some good work being done to mitigate some of these issues. I'm not a fan of regulation normally, but when there's such systemic concentrated risk from some of these cloud providers and infrastructure providers, Europe's leading the charge here with DORA, and I think it's a good place to go looking.
I had cocktail hour with somebody in the industry, and she lives here in Colorado. She was in San Jose for work, but she also had brought her kids, and they got up to fly out Friday morning. They didn't. Her husband calls her, says, "Oh my gosh, they got up at 4 o'clock to get to a 6 o'clock flight, right? And calls her, and she goes, well, what the heck could be happening at this point? And tells her what's happening. So they decide they're not going to turn the car in. They're going to drive from San Jose, California to Colorado with teenage kids. But listening to her talk through it, and I had this Terminator kind of feeling of going to her saying, telling her to go to the bank, pull some cash out. She went to 3 different banks in order to pull the cash out. And then I'm saying, okay, so now you're going to get on the road and drive, in which you need to refill your car. Are you going to have gas? Are you going to have problems getting gas or whatever? Which she didn't have. But I started playing the scenario out with this kind of stuff. And it's like, do I have cash at home? Do I have food at home?
Have a bag I can grab in the event of emergency.
Maybe those people aren't that crazy. So anyway,
do I have some chickens I can trade for fuel? It's kind of like Mad Max type,
right?
Totally.
Are we going to start bartering? Like
3 chickens for a liter of gas.
I mean, I can't imagine, having to hit 3 banks and having that kind of your anxiety level going up to saying, oops, this is not looking really good.
You can see how a run on the bank happens, can't you? She probably went in to get $100 thinking
they were not. The first 2 banks didn't have their systems.
No, but my point is you go into the first bank to get $100, then you go into the second bank and think, maybe I'll get $300 out just in case. Then you go to the third bank and you're like, can I have $1,000, please? And this is how runs on the bank happen. People just are wired to want their money.
Almost like the pandemic all over again.
Yeah, a little bit of the toilet paper problem. Okay, so let me get on to the next one, which is on earnings. We've had a couple of big earnings this week. IBM came out. I know we did a big write-up on it, but I went through and looked at all of these. I mean, AI and the consulting stuff, raising, their level. Full disclosure, as an IBM stockholder, because I go way back to IBM and it's back in 19.
Great infrastructure numbers. We're on the infrastructure matter.
9% growth on the mainframe.
8. Eight.
I'm sorry. Okay. only 8% growth on the mainframe.
Only 8. I mean,
I'm like going, what the heck? This is out of cycle.
So I've got to put. I wrote about this. I'm speaking to Ross Morey, who runs that business, next week, because I literally pinged our AR contact at IBM, and I need a call to understand it, how he's pulling this off. Basically, that was almost word for word. Like, how on earth this late in the cycle? No, I mean, I've listened to IBM earnings calls for years, and normally this late in the cycle, they roll out the script. The mainframe's a cyclical business. We're late in the cycle. We fully expect this. The business is down 40%. This happens every time. We're a couple of quarters away from the new box coming out. Things will recover. Not this time. Not this script. They are, I think it's 10 quarters into what is normally an 8 to 10 quarter cycle, and they're still posting growth.
And it's not just the Z. It's also...
It's power.
Well, its power is up, but not as big as that. The power is definitely up, and it's Linux, and nowadays it's going to even be better because of, thank you very much, CrowdStrike. And the other one that's up is the data storage side of the house, which was driven by the Z. So they're adding more storage capacity to the Z, which means basically transactions got to be up or something. So anyway, I'd love to hear the feedback. And we'll get
I mean, maybe I'll report back next week. But I mean, Tom McPherson's doing a great job. They're late in the power cycle as well. Power 10's been out for, I think, 3 years, and they're still posting growth. That's a great performance. They launched some edge servers earlier on this year, whether that's where it's coming from. Tom and Ross are doing a great job to grow businesses late in the cycle where they're very desperate for product updates.
So the second big announcement this week was Google Cloud earnings.
Yes.
Despite the fact that they didn't buy Whiz.
Yeah, I mean, was that a trial balloon to be able to see?
Yeah.
I mean, the way I looked at that one was the Whiz one, just briefly while we go there, because we're struggling with time today. I took that it was a trial balloon to basically see whether big tech would be allowed to buy a smaller tech company. I think they put up a trial balloon and said, "We're Google. We're a $3 trillion company or whatever they are this week. The Lena Khan doesn't like big tech companies. Are we going to get away with it? Yes or no?" And I think the fact that it died so quickly was that the trial balloon got shot down.
And Krista, you had a perspective on that too.
I mean, it's so from my perspective, I mean, possibly, right? But I mean, from my perspective, if you also look at what Whiz might be anticipating that they're going to be able to raise in an IPO round, I mean, staggering, right? And I think it just kind of points to the growth in the cybersecurity market, and especially given Whiz, their platform, based on what I've seen, very comprehensive, very aligned towards, protecting cloud infrastructure, cloud applications, really kind of digging into some of the potential vulnerabilities in code, right? Like we just saw through CrowdStrike. So I think, it perhaps is a little bit more than kind of just a test, because I do think that Google would have loved to be able to add all those capabilities to its portfolio. I mean, think about what a heavy hitter it, would have made Google from a security specific perspective, right? Not that they don't already have.
Whiz plus Mandiant, is that what you're thinking?
Right. Exactly. Right. So I think for Whiz, assuming that they did decide to walk away because they believe that they have, a very, very strong future through an IPO, again, I think kind of points to the need in the market for those capabilities. I mean, and we saw, you should have seen at RSA, just all the buzz around them, a few months ago when they raised $1 billion, and kind of just the, their funding, not even an IPO, right? So that was kind of my takeaway as well.
The interesting one for me, though, is if you just play the math out of this, and the CEO said this week that they hope to get to $1 billion of revenue, that puts the valuation at 23x revenue. You look at what Red Hat sold to IBM for was 11 times revenue. So the CEO of Whiz is making a bet that they're roughly 2 times more interesting and sexy than Red Hat were in 2019 to IBM. That's bold.
It's
in
bold.
a no IPO climate. That's bold to me.
It's a very bold place.
You just do the math on the valuation numbers, and if I was a Whiz employee and I had stock options, how happy would I be right now?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
23 billion. I think I said to somebody the other day, and maybe this is a British saying, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
And I've been there before with another company. So
yeah, interesting.
Not at this size, but, a little bit different. Okay. We have got a minute and a half. Take us out, Steve, with Google's numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't cover all of Alphabet, so I just drill down into the Google piece. Revenue hitting 10.35 billion. They surpassed expectations on that. It's up from last year's figures of 8 billion. So I think, and I've got a research note specifically on the Google Cloud piece that's just in the queue to publish, maybe get out today. A lot of CapEx spend, I think, is probably the only sort of piece. I'm trying to pull the numbers here. Huge CapEx investment. It's going to be interesting to see. Here we go. Yeah, increasing capital expenditure, projecting at least 12 billion per quarter through 2024. Last year was 6.9. So what's driving that CapEx? AI.
And it's also expanding the geos as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah. So and I put that in. Great catch, Camberley. Great catch. You obviously read my research, so I feel a warm glow.
I'm thinking that, dude.
I feel a warm glow now coming through the screen. But no, I mean it's a couple of things. It's building out more regions, sovereign cloud, needing to deploy infrastructure into. I've been banging the drum for that all year. And then it's deploying AI infrastructure, with their Trillium TPU. So I think it's I think the top line revenue growth for Google Cloud, over 10 billion, impressive. Certainly cemented their position as the third largest hyperscaler. Got to watch out for OCI and the Oracle guys. They're coming for them, but I think still solid growth. I haven't seen the market share breakdowns, but I think it's kind of good directionally for them to be growing that business by 2 billion. Need to do more in the enterprise space. Google's got to start punching its weight in. They've employed some new sales leaders that we got to meet at Google Cloud Next. I want to see that those guys are starting to roll out a new enterprise sales muscle for Google. If they do, good times ahead, I predict.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Stephen and Krista Case. And thanks, everyone, for joining us on this episode number 49, if you will, on Infrastructure Matters. Please remember to like, share, all those things, because, it's all about popularity, isn't it? No, it's about how much information we're providing you on Infrastructure Matters. We will see you next week. Thank you very much.